Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. It's called How Consumer Brands Can Gain the Trust of Millennials. So anyway, we're very, very glad to have you here. I'm Jane Boutel. I'm the CMO and co-founder of DigSite, and I will be kind of starting and ending the event today, but the main event will be our DigSite CEO and co-founder, Monica Wingate. She'll be your main presenter for today. So anyway, I know everybody's just kind of getting in and getting settled, which is great. While you do that, a couple of kind of housekeeping things. First of all, we will be sending out the recording of the presentation, and also you'll be able to get that afterwards. So if you have to step away or you want to share it with a colleague, that will be coming to you by tomorrow. Secondly, if you have any questions along the way, we would absolutely love to hear from you. If you look at the control panel on the right side of your screen, you will see a tab that says questions, and go in there and just type in the question box, and I will be monitoring that as I can throughout the session, and then definitely at the end we will have time for Q&A. So we'd love to hear from you. That's, I think, one of our favorite things. Someone has mentioned that they're having a problem with the dial-in number. I guess if you can hear this, then that probably is not relevant to you, but if any colleagues are, please try to call in also through your computer, and I will respond directly to that person. Anyway, I will take this moment now to turn this over to Monica Wingate, the DigSite CEO and co-founder, as I mentioned. Just for those of you who don't know Monica, she does have a very deep background in market research, about almost 20 years, spent starting in consumer products, both General Mills, Pillsbury. She's worked in advertising. She directed the Nielsen Center for Marketing Research at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and she ran her own brand consulting agency prior to starting DigSite. So she's got some great perspective to offer. Anyway, I'll turn it over to you now, Monica.
Good afternoon. I'm so glad to see so many attendees today. So the topic, as James said, we're really going to be talking about millennials today, and specifically in relation to consumer brands. So just to kind of get us started, the first thing I wanted to talk about is why this topic of trust is so important, and particularly among millennials. And there's been a number of research studies done that indicate that millennials are the most loyal generation to their favorite brands. And so that's something that we have to really understand as marketers, is how to build that loyalty, and really the foundation of loyalty for millennials is trust. And you'll see throughout this presentation, in all the commentary from millennials, you'll see that trust is not necessarily an easy thing to gain with them. And so we're going to kind of talk through what that means for your organization based on some proprietary research that we conducted here at DigSite. So today, you know, what consumer products brands are seen as resonating with millennials? There was a study done with a top 100 brands, that top 100 millennial brands, and out of those 100 millennial brands, these are the ones that were kind of consumer packaged goods type products. In other words, the rest were cars, electronics, restaurants, and retailers, clothing retailers primarily. But these were the food and beverage brands primarily here. Two household product brands, Dove and Johnson & Johnson, that made it into the mix. So let's just talk, before we get into DigSite study, a little bit about what this study had suggested created the connection for these brands. And what they were really focused on was engaging with consumers on social media, with kind of creating a two-way dialogue with those consumers, as well as For example, in the case of Johnson & Johnson, they had celebrities kind of giving advice to millennials, and that was really resonating. In the case of General Mills, they had kind of these quirky, fun ads related to Fiber One of all products, where participants could win a year's worth of free cheesecake, and so it was these kinds of efforts that they thought really helped to help these brands resonate with millennials. But our research suggests that that's really not sufficient to gain trust. So we're going to really talk about moving beyond that study and digging deeper into not just how can a brand resonate from a marketing standpoint with millennials, but how can you get really in-depth affinity with consumers and with these millennials in particular. So how did we dig into this topic? There's tons of surveys that have been done, and we really did not take the approach of just surveying millennials. What we did is essentially a one-week community with these participants where they were able to go on their mobile device, on their computer, on their tablet at any time of day or night and answer questions that we posted and have a conversation with each other. And so that was kind of the methodology, was using the DigSite platform to talk to consumers. We used actually a specific new methodology that we launched in January called Sprints, which actually has a kind of a three-step process. One is to really help understand and prioritize consumers' needs based on their lifestyles and behaviors. And then the second step is kind of to share with them specific ideas that they can provide feedback and help you optimize. And then the third phase is really the phase of iterating. So as you learn things, really being able to follow up, ask additional questions, or show additional ideas to participants, all within this 7-day time frame. And what this allowed us to do was we really started just talking to millennials about what was important to them in beverage products and in household products, and it led us down this path of trust. And so by the end of the communities, we were kind of really talking to them more about what trust means, because it clearly had come up as an important area for them. So we actually ran 2 sprints. One was a marketing concept sprint on household cleaning. So we were actually showed consumers, we had a conversation with them about household cleaning and ultimately shared with them a couple of brands for discussion. And then the second one was a product concept sprint where we actually were showing people new product ideas. And the 2 product ideas that we chose for this actually came out of an article of kind of the hottest new beverage concepts that are out there today. And so we picked a couple of those hot beverage concepts to share with the millennials and get their feedback on whether it resonated with them. And then we did a bonus. What we did is we had marketers who have, who've communicated with DigSite in the past. We asked them into a community, and what we asked them to do was kind of go through the same activity that as the marketing concept sprint, and instead of answering for themselves, we had them answer what they thought millennials would say. And so this kind of helped us to gauge what were some of the insights that came out of the study that were definitely new or different than the conceptions that marketers had. And so we'll be sharing all these findings with you today. So first off, let's talk about who were these millennials that we brought into the community. We talked to 40 of them. We recruited them via social media. DigSite has a proprietary recruiting approach called Social Find, and essentially what we do is we micro-target people in social media based on their the brands that they've liked, the pages that they've visited, the information they've put into their profile, anything that we can kind of gain from them on social media, which is a lot, we use to try to find the right participants. And those are the only participants that get invited to participate in our community, and that really helps to make sure that we don't get fakers or professional researchers in our communities. This particular group was a mix. It was about 75% female and 25% male. They were all millennials. They were all primary grocery shoppers, and you can see here we kind of had a pretty good distribution of ages from 18 to 34. So what did we ask them to do? So there were, as I said, 2 communities. In the beverage product concept community, what we did is we started off talking to them about their lifestyle. So we asked them to actually take a picture of the beverages that they had on hand, upload that to the community to share with each other. We asked them what they liked, what they used, and kind of started there. And then building on that, we started to ask them about some specific features and some specific benefits that we had done some research on that seemed to be important for beverages, and we asked them to prioritize those to get a sense of what was most important to them. And then we had a kind of a conversation about that. And for example, you know, just to give you guys an insight that's not farther on in my findings here, one of the things that wasn't mentioned when we asked them unaided about these things was that the term organic was not mentioned for beverages. And we found that really interesting because a lot of these folks mentioned all natural, they mentioned no GMO, they mentioned fair trade, but they didn't mention organic. And so we, you know, explored with them a little bit further, well, how come nobody mentioned organic? And a lot of people came back and said, I'd love organic, but organic's too expensive. And so, you know, and I'm not 100% sure what organic means, so, you know, I'm okay with these other claims as kind of helping me understand that these are natural enough for me. And I also look at ingredient labels and things like that to determine. So, so it was kind of interesting that millennials already kind of have made some determinations about whether organic is something that they're kind of willing to pay for. And I think in this community, a lot of millennials were not, and some were. Then after that, we kind of had them give us feedback on 2 product concepts. You're going to see those concepts in a minute. And then basically what we had them do coming out of that was we actually asked them to build their ideal new product, new beverage product, and they were able to use all of the things that they talked about in the community to build that. So their most important features and most important benefits and the 2 product concepts that they saw, and they were able to kind of pull that all together into their own conception of what was ideal for them. And they were also then able to like each other's ideas and vote, and it was really exciting to see some folks actually drew their package. You know, they drew what their package looked like, and you'll get to see a picture of that as we move through this presentation. The second community was on household products, so completely different product category, but also obviously a CPG focus. And here we started by focusing on their lifestyle around household cleaning and their category usage. And we actually asked them really a little bit more here about established versus new brands. So what are some new household products that they tried in the past year? Why did they try that? And then we actually had a fun little activity where we said, hey, I want you to sell someone else in this community on a product that you love. It could be a new product you tried in the last year. It could be something that you use every day, and sell it. Tell us why, you know, convince your peers here why they should be using that product. And it really helped us understand what features were really important to them without asking them about those features. And so we were able to kind of derive some of that information from them about what was important and then probe on that. Moving forward from that, we actually had feedback on 2 kind of rough ads for 2 laundry detergent brands, and then kind of following up on that, we actually asked them up specifically, as I mentioned before, about the concept of trust and what it means. And several of them recorded videos for you as marketers to tell you what they wanted you to know about what trust means to them. And you'll get to see some of those videos toward the end of that presentation today. So again, why did we choose DigSite Sprint as a methodology versus other methods, besides the fact that we're at DigSite here presenting? But partially here, you know, one of the opportunities this afforded us was the ability to talk to people over a period of days and extend the conversation and really adjust as we learn without the challenges and logistics of putting together physical focus groups, and that tended to work really well. And of course, the reason we think this platform was particularly well suited for millennials is because it's designed to be really a true social media experience, and so it's very easy for people to pick up and use. They don't feel like they're participating in a research study, they feel like they're participating in a community, just like a lot of the other social communities that they belong to. And so this was a really particularly good fit for millennials. So Drum roll. So here are the areas I'm going to be talking through with you today, and if there's one slide you can take away and share with your team, these are the words of the day to remember. So gaining trust of millennials is a lot about the heritage or the story behind a brand. Health is critically important to millennials, which I think many of you have heard, although there's some interesting nuances to that. Claims and efficacy claims is an area we'll be focusing on with millennials, and again, their distrust makes making claims a very interesting proposition for companies and something you have to really pay close attention to. Transparency is something that is very important to millennials, and we'll talk about why and what that means to them. Also aesthetics, you're going to see how millennials look at aesthetics, and remember this is a visual, Pinterest, Snapchat generation here. I mean, these are folks that really see things in a visual way, and so that came out very loud and clear in this community. And then we're also going to talk about social, but not necessarily the same social that we talked about at the beginning of social advertising and then social engagement, but really what social means to them in terms of building trust. So let's get started. So let's talk about this concept of brand heritage. So this was one of the activities that we did. What we did is we posted these 8 brands here, and we asked participants to drag pluses, minuses, and question marks on each brand here to tell us their affinity for that brand. Is this a brand that they like or dislike or they're not sure about, and why? And so what you're seeing here is each of those brands and the number of pluses, minuses, and questions they received. So you can see Clorox did extremely well with 22 likes. Tide did pretty well. Palmolive, Arm & Hammer with 20 likes. Honest Company was a bit of a surprise here with only 3 folks giving that a like, and a lot of question marks, not necessarily a lot of negatives for that brand, and we'll kind of explain why as we go through. Johnson & Johnson, a very trusted brand as well, and Seventh Generation, another kind of health, natural kind of brand, again, not doing as strong on the likes, a lot of question marks there. And what we basically heard here is, this idea of a history of a brand or a story of a brand. Tide is a name I grew up with and trust, and my family's used it for generations, and this is a household name. And so that heritage in and of itself does mean something to millennials. I think sometimes we forget that, thinking that they're just trying the new thing. But that heritage means something to them. And in fact, for new brands, this can be just a really important thing to understand in terms of the stories that those brands tell. So, for example, this is an ad for a brand called Dust Cutter that they, a beverage brand that they were able to rate. They were able to drag some pluses, minuses, and question marks on this specific advertisement. And what they basically said is, hey, this really tells me about a family tradition. It's a family-owned business. It's not a large corporation. Family inviting. And so one of the things that happened here was, even though Dust Cutter was a brand new up-and-coming brand, they were able to establish trust through their story, through their brand story. And so I think this cannot be underplayed with millennials. They really want to feel this connection, and trust for them is about a relationship. And if you don't give the brand a strong heritage, a strong personality, a strong grounding, they're going to have a hard time. You're a stranger to them, and you're going to have a hard time building trust with them. The second area is, focusing on health. So here what we had, we basically asked millennials we asked them to complete the sentence. I wish when I blank, I would like to drink a beverage that blanks so I feel more blank. And what we did is we looked at their responses to these questions, and were able to kind of determine what things were important to them without, giving them a feature list or asking them that questions directly. And what we found here was that taste came out, which you would expect from a beverage as highly important. But things like health and natural ingredients actually came out as very important to them, as well as less sugar. And so, you know, definitely the concept of health and natural, both were concepts that resonated very strongly with this audience. So here is my question for you. So here are the two brands. So I've talked to you a little bit about Dust Cutter, and I'm going to give you a second to kind of look at these two ads. But the first one was Protein 2.0, and the second was Dust Cutter. And so millennials were given an opportunity to choose which of these two brands appeals to them more. And what I'd like to do is give you the opportunity to take a guess. So Jane, if you want to throw up the survey question, the poll question, which of these new beverages do you think appeals more to millennials? The Protein 2.0 or Dust Cutter? And we're just going to monitor this for a minute and let everybody have a chance to respond. Okay, I think we've got about 3/4 of you responding, so we'll go ahead and post the results. Oh, good, we got up to the majority there. All right. So we had Protein 2.0 at 66% and Dust Cutter at 34%. Pretty interesting. All right, well, let's share with you what the actual findings were. Here we go. Here we go. It was actually 52-48. It was virtually a dead tie. However, I think that you guys are onto something here with the potential of Protein 2.0 to have been the more appealing brand, but they lacked believability. And so when you ask them which concept was more believable, Dust Cutter came across way ahead of Protein 2.0 on the believability side of things, and that really hurt them in terms of their preference, even though they probably had the broader appealing product from a claim standpoint. So we're going to do this again. While we're at it, see how good you guys are at making these predictions. So I have two different ads here. One is for Tide Free, and one is for Honest Company. Now, you saw earlier that there was less knowledge of Honest Company, a lot more question marks. So when they saw these two ads with more information about Honest Company and Tide, where do you think they netted out? So Jane, if you want to go ahead and throw that poll up. Which of these brands appealed more to millennials? Tide or Honest Company? We'll give it another minute here. You guys are doing a good job of answering quickly. All right, we're good. I think we'll go ahead and publish out the results. Okay, we got 59% for Tide and 41% for Honest Company. Very cool. Well, you guys guessed this one right. So what we had was Tide Free coming up at almost 3/4 of being marked as the favorite. You know, essentially what it came down to for them was two things. Actually, the aesthetics, and we'll talk more about the aesthetics a little later, of Tide being much cleaner, but also that their claims were a little bit more hard-hitting with the dermatologist recommendation, and so they felt like they were more clearly able to establish trust with a company that gave them claims than a company that was called Honest. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And now Honest has done very well among millennials, and we just have to remember that, you know, Tide's been around for a long time, and it does take a real story to establish trust among these millennials, and Honest might not have been doing yet the job of generating that awareness for that brand story and what they have to deliver. And we saw some other things that you'll see on the social side too in terms of other information that Millennials had about Honest Company. So efficacy claims. This is, as I said, this came out really strongly in the community. So again, when we had people drag pluses, minuses, and question marks on these two ads, one of the things that came out for Tide was dermatologist tested. Does it mean anything? Was it approved? Is it better for skin? And this is the skepticism of the millennial. A lot of people liked those claims, and it really did well for Tide. But there were some millennials who were just really, their little horns go up and they're not sure. And, and you see, I want to check for myself what the actual ingredients are. And, I want them to elaborate more. I want to know, whether, whether this has more information for me about the 100% natural, the non-toxic, or the dye-free ingredient, free fragrance. So there's a lot of things here that they wanted to know more on, and you have to really make a decision about what you're going to put on the package and then how you're going to help them navigate that research. And you'll see through this, these findings that millennials aren't necessarily going to take your word for it, but they do want the data and the information from you. So the more you can provide to them when they want to look for it in a way that they can find it rapidly is something that is useful for them. And that's where this transparency comes into play. So I like it that it had the website on the package so that I can research more about the product. Please, please, please don't say things that are false claims. We don't want to have to sift through misleading claims. Gosh, I drank this beverage and it said all natural, but then I looked at it and had some artificial colors and some artificial flavors, and I kind of thought this was funny, but if the drink is natural, I don't really have an issue with it looking pretty. I mean, yes, they do, and no, they don't, right? They really want you to be honest with them, and they really feel like there's hidden information on products, and they're trying to find their way through what is this hidden information? What are you not telling me that I should know? And so the next area is aesthetics. So we asked people why Tide was their favorite. So you saw that Tide, kind of beat Honest Company, and we asked them why. And we actually got really two very clear responses. One was related to brand trust and familiarity, which you guys would have expected, but many was because of the very specific ad concept that we showed them. And it was the color, the slogan, that kind of thing. The label for Honest Company was a little bit more washed out. It wasn't as clean and crisp. It didn't look quite as trustworthy or professional. They're looking for something that indicates to them that this is quality, and they're looking at the visuals to do that. There's also, I thought this was kind of interesting, just thinking about aesthetics, going back to the Dust Cutter versus the Protein 2.0. Dust Cutter had images of fresh lemons, which I know was a purposeful attempt to make it look fresh, but naturally does trick the mind and make me think that it's fresh. And so they are recognizing that, hey, yeah, you're going to be doing things aesthetically that make me feel better about buying your product, but I'm good with that as long as you don't deliberately mislead me, as long as you don't deliberately tell me things that aren't true. I'm okay with that. I understand that, but I want to look at it, and I want it to look appealing. So the next thing is just, I wanted to share with you one of the ideas that came out of the beverage community, and this is Jacqueline, and she actually put together this drawing and posted it on DigSite for her ideal beverage, and I thought you would be interested in just kind of seeing, not necessarily just the image, but the description that she gave. And it was basically bottled water with fresh ingredients that could be infused. It would come in a recyclable bottle. The graphics would be minimalistic, with the name of the product in the front and the ingredients in the bottom right corner and product details on the back. So you can see where she really spent a lot of time thinking about what she wanted that experience to be when she saw that bottle and she picked up that bottle, what she wanted it to look like, and that was a part of the experience for her. It wasn't just what was in the bottle. For millennials, this is really, really important. So it's not just the product, but it's the packaging, it's the design, it's the aesthetics that all kind of reinforce the feeling that she wants to feel that this is healthy for her. Social support. So I mentioned earlier, yes, you want to have engaging social ads, maybe a great personality, you want to build a relationship over social, but there's also the other side of social media, which is how do you handle the negativity? Do you have good customer service? Do you address things in a timely manner? Do you actually care what your customers think? This is important to millennials. I want to make sure that the company will make it right if there's a problem, either through a free product coupon, a refund, shipping. And what was really interesting is there's been some other research done among millennials that indicate that they actually have higher loyalty among brands that screw up and then make it right. That you don't tend to lose them if you make it right. But if you don't make it right, that's obviously something that is bad. And then to the point of doing research, this was on Honest Company. Hey, I read some bad research, some bad reviews on media. I'm not going to buy it. And it may have been actually they weren't aware of Honest Company. They saw the ad, and instead of in DigSite responding right there, they went out and did a little research and then came back and said, nope, I don't think I would buy that. And I think that's really important to understand, that these millennials are willing to check on their phone while they're in the stores. They're willing to go on social. They're willing to ask their friends, and those things all matter to them. And so it is really important that you look at the total experience of the customers really feeling heard. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is how did the results of this DigSite differ from what marketers expected? And so what we had, we talked to about I think it was about 25 marketers, might have been more, and we asked them what they were expecting when they saw what they thought millennials would say is important. And so here are some of the things that they thought: safety, product transparency, eco-friendly, brand values, natural ingredients, were some of the things that they thought would come out on top. And obviously eco-friendly products weren't really talked about in the terms of eco-friendly. They were really talked about more in terms of how it affected me personally. So does it cause skin irritation for my child, or is it going to have a scent that's going to bother me, or is it going to is it a natural product for my home that I'm not going to get sick? And so there definitely was some emphasis on eco-friendly, but it was a little bit more selfish and a little bit less, I want to say, the environment oriented, at least how they talked about it within the DigSite community. The other thing is that we had one savvy marketer know that smell was important for household products, but I will tell you loud and clear, actually, that was a super important feature specifically for household products. Smell was mentioned over and over and over again as their cue that the product worked well and that it was clean. The last thing is that marketers didn't really place as much emphasis on product transparency as was mentioned by millennials. I mean, they're just a very skeptical bunch, and I think that's something we need to continue to be mindful of as marketers is the expectation that you're going to share information with them. And I think a lot of natural brands do a phenomenal job of sharing what farm did this come from, where was this grown, where was this manufactured, how was it processed, who was harmed in the making. I mean, all those things are really important to them. They want to know them, and if you can provide that information on your website or a way that they can access through their phone, you're going to build trust. Here was another area where, kind of like you guys, they were actually just about 50-50 on Honest Company versus Tide, but they didn't see the Honest Company results that you guys saw before you voted. So I think there was an expectation among marketers that basically that Honest had a cleaner look, that maybe that millennials would have an interest in sustainability, and you know, that and then there were some savvy people who thought, no, Tide is you know, more specific about the claims. So I think, you know, we saw kind of an interesting, you know, some interesting findings here that I think were surprising to the marketers in that community, as it looked like with this audience as well. And lastly here, one of the things that we did is look at those 8 brands. You saw millennials' responses, and we asked the marketers what they were expecting. So were they expecting millennials to like, dislike, or question each of these brands? And you'll see here, again, that people were expecting many more to like Honest Company and 7th Gen, and actually more so than the other brands. And marketers were expecting many more dislikes of these other brands than we saw in reality among millennials. And again, I think this is just an underestimation of the importance of heritage and the story, a clear brand story to millennials that really has kept some of these legacy brands front and center in millennials' minds as they make purchase decisions. So before we get to Q&A, I wanted to give you an opportunity to watch a short video here created by the millennials. We just did a compilation of the videos that they posted on DigSite. So I'm going to play that for you so you have an opportunity to hear what they said. The volume on this might be a little bit lower, so if you need to turn the volume up on your computer to hear, you may need to do that. Here we go.
One child who has sensitive skin, so I have to be very careful with the type of lotions and laundry detergent and items that I use. I also believe that I like for myself something that has a very strong and unique scent, something that leaves stuff very fresh and appealing to my nose, I guess.
I guess number one thing is quality. If it's not a quality brand overall, I don't find it would be trustworthy. If you're not into making a quality product, I shouldn't be trusting you. And then another thing, and I think that's big today, is social media, how they handle their social media, how they handle negativity, especially on social media. Do they really have good customer service, address it in the timely manner, really seem to care what people think? If the company cares about what customers are saying, I think they're definitely more trustworthy.
Price is something very, very important because we all want the best brand, but yet usually those are the ones that have cost more. So if we can think about, you know, putting the best product out there with the best, you know, efficiency, non-toxic, all those good things that brands have. I can buy something that, you know, could be cheap, but could be very good, then that's what I would be thinking about.
Sometimes it's quality over quantity. You don't need a real fancy or high-end detergent to have clean clothes. Most of the service is about laundry detergent and cleaning supplies. I use Lysol on Tide, stuff like that. So it isn't really anything too complicated to sometimes. Just I like my stuff to smell good a certain way, like Tide smells.
To me, being honest is very important when it comes to products that my children will use. Tide Free and Clear is known to have used carcinogens in their detergent that have been shown to cause cancer, dioxazine, and they say they've reduced it, but they haven't removed it. So I feel like in order to be trustworthy, you should be honest about what's in your products.
So So as it said at the bottom of this report, you all have access to our in-depth reports on all of these studies on our website. You can go to our blog page and find the reports both for the household products community as well as the beverage community. And coming out after this webcast, we will be doing another blog that kind of recaps the marketers' expectations and what they found on viewing these reports versus what they were expecting up front. So with all of that, it is time to go to Q&A. I'm going to turn it back over to Jane here, and I'm going to turn her audio on so that you can hear her, maybe. There you are, Jane. You are now unmuted.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hope you enjoyed learning a bit about some of the findings we had on the millennials. I think they're a pretty interesting bunch and certainly a big source of interest to many, many marketers. So I'm going to start with some of the questions that we've got. I would encourage you to please share your own questions, again, in that question box in your control panel on the right of your screen, and we'll be happy to go through them. One thing I want to mention, too, before we go too far is that if you have further questions about either the study or about DigSite or the sprints, my contact information is on your screen right now. Please feel free to email me, give me a call. I would be happy to sit down and talk, show you whatever you'd like to see with DigSite to see how it might work for you or just to get a better understanding of what we did. All right, anyway, now let's jump into questions. First one here from Roger. Trust is such a strong predictor of brand loyalty and satisfaction. Is this stronger among millennials than for other segments, such as baby boomers, for example?
Great question. I don't think we know definitively whether this is a better predictor of loyalty for them, but we do know that loyalty is extremely strong among this group. And based on the findings from this community, it seemed like trust was a very strong factor for them. So I would predict that if you did a survey, you might expect to see a stronger linkage if you were to do some predictive work in this space. It might vary by brand, but it certainly qualitatively would be, I think, a great hypothesis.